What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to be reviewing game week 3 and then also just talking about our game week 4 plans briefly. So straight into it then, Onana at goalkeeper kind of let me down there. So he had Forest at home and obviously conceded 2 within the first 4 minutes, so not ideal whatsoever. I did have Turner on my bench as well, and he actually managed to get more points than Onana just from save points. But yeah, I'm going to just have to take the L on Onana. I don't plan on transferring him out anytime soon, but obviously United haven't looked great defensively. So it's kind of a shit situation there, but I'm just going to have to stick with Onana because obviously I don't have the luxury of transferring a goalkeeper out right now because there's other areas in my team that are more of a priority. So moving on to defense then. So my loyalty was finally rewarded with Matty Cash. He ended up getting 17 points last game week. Obviously he scored a brace. So I've had Matty Cash since the start. Game week 1, he had 0.74 XG. Obviously he missed a sitter in that game, so that was the reason why the XG was so high. But I had a feeling about Matty Cash before the season started. I knew that he was like an ultra attacking right back, and with the way Villa were playing, they were pushing to be a more attacking team with the signings they were making and stuff. And pretty much we seen that against Burnley. He essentially played as a right winger, and Villa are lethal on the transition as well. So literally any counter attack Villa were doing, you just seen Matty Cash busting a lung to get into the box. I'm not going to sit here and claim that I knew Matty Cash was going to score a brace because I think this was actually his first goal for Villa since like May last year. But I did just like the idea of Matty Cash when I'd seen little bits of him from pre-season and even just like the first game. Obviously in the first game he got -1 for me, but I wasn't put off by that, and I did say that in my first video. When you've got a player like him just constantly getting into the box, he's always going to be a goal threat, and he actually ended up having more touches in the box than Ollie Watkins in that game, which is insane. So yeah, I'm very, very pleased with Matty Cash, 17-point haul there. And then another fullback who got me a good haul this week was Udogie. So Udogie got me 12 points, and he was actually one of my transfers in this week, so it's an absolute masterclass from me, if I must say.
I am Jose Mourinho.
So I obviously transferred Gabriel out for game week 3 and brought Udogie in. And again, Udogie was kind of a similar situation to Cash. He looked like an ultra attacking fullback. Even if he's not playing in a team that's sort of guaranteeing clean sheets all the time, he's just ultra attacking, trying to get into the box as much as possible. He's involved in the build up. So he wasn't one of those players I brought in expecting him to score or assist, but I just knew he would have a good chance because of how much he's getting forward. And I'm not going to lie, it's kind of paid off for me going for the budget fullbacks rather than the likes of Chilwell. And that brings me to the last fullback, which was Stupinian. Obviously, he didn't have a great game. He got beat 3-1 by West Ham. Brighton actually dominated that game, to be fair, but West Ham again were just lethal on the transition. Now, the thing about Stupinian is his fixtures are now going to turn bad. So he's got Newcastle at home, United away. He does have a good fixture against Bournemouth at home in game week 6. Then it's straight back to Villa away, Liverpool at home, City away. So honestly, it wouldn't be the worst thing in the world for anybody to transfer Stupinian out and maybe look at getting like a Newcastle defender in because Newcastle's fixtures are about to turn good. For me personally, it's not really a priority area for me to make a transfer in. I've got other areas that I want to improve first of all. But yeah, if you've got a Stupinian and you maybe have a little bit of money in the bank, don't really have much transfers you need to do, it wouldn't be the worst idea to try and transfer him out and maybe go for the likes of Trippier if you can. And that moves us on to midfield then. So first of all, we'll start with Bukayo Saka. Obviously a good performance against Fulham. He did score a penalty, but honestly, he should have had more involvement in goals there. So he had an XG of 1.36. Obviously, that's a bit higher because of the penalty he got. But even for expected assists, it was 1.08. Now, I know obviously some people are a bit weird about expected stats, but I just think it's a really good metric to go off because it shows how much they're getting involved in the attack. And for me, Saka, he's the standout Arsenal pick. He's above Odegaard for me. He's above Martinelli for me. He's just a must-have at the moment. And even despite the fact he's playing United next game week, he'll be staying in the team for me. And I'm hoping that he's more permanent on penalties. I'm hoping he's not going to just start giving penalties to Odegaard every now and then. But yeah, well pleased with Saka again. And that moves us on to Mohamed Salah then. So Mohamed Salah is obviously my most premium midfielder. He's now got 2 assists and 1 goal in 3 games. So he is returning. You know, there's nothing wrong with him. But because he's 12.5 million, you do kind of expect a little bit more for him. So I'm not going to lie and say that the thought hasn't came across my mind to transfer him out and obviously get the likes of Bruno Fernandes in, free up a little bit more money and then upgrade my midfield even more. But for right now, I'm going to stick with him, and the reason being is because his fixtures are going to turn good now. So obviously he's got Villa at home, and then he's got Wolves away, West Ham at home, Spurs away and Brighton away are tough fixtures, but then he's got Everton, Forest and Luton back to back to back. So I don't really have any plans on transferring out anytime soon unless I really have to. I'm definitely not going to do it in the next couple of game weeks because his obvious replacement would be Bruno Fernandes. He has really good underlying stats. He had a really good game week in game week 3, but Bruno Fernandes' fixtures here are about to turn tough for the next 2 game weeks anyway, Arsenal and Brighton. There is maybe an opportunity to bring Bruno Fernandes in game week 6 and forward because his fixtures are really good there, but I don't really have my mind made up on that yet. So for now, I'm just going to stick with Salah. And the thing with Salah as well is even when he's played kind of bad in those 3 games, like he had a really quiet game against Newcastle. Obviously, they went down to 10 men very early, but he still just pulls an assist out of nothing. He's just one of those players where he's inevitable. Even if he's playing bad, he's getting a goal or assist somewhere. And that consistency is really important. So Bruno Fernandes is obviously on overall 16 points this season. He had 2 bad games and 1 good game. Salah's on 15 points. He only has 1 point less than Bruno Fernandes just because he's so consistent. Even when he's playing bad, he's getting goals, he's getting an assist, whatever. So I'm going to stick with Salah for now, but he's not 100% nailed on the way I said he was the first video I done coming into the season. There is definitely other options to consider there. And then moving on to Marcus Rashford. So Marcus Rashford, we finally seen him moving out to the left-hand side, which we were crying out for, and straight away gets 2 assists. Obviously, he wasn't really like a goal threat in that game. He didn't look like scoring, but it just suits him so much more being on the left, getting the opportunity to run at people and square fullbacks down. For the first United goal, it was just Rashford on the left, driving at fullbacks and getting the cross in for Eriksen to tap in. He just looks a much bigger threat on that left-hand side. He just doesn't get the opportunity to do these things when he's playing down the middle, so I'm hoping that he stays on the left, and I think he will stay on the left for the foreseeable future. He's obviously got Arsenal coming up next, so a lot of people, I've seen a lot of people tempted to take him out and maybe bring in the likes of Maddison and stuff, but for me personally, obviously Arsenal away looks like a really difficult fixture on paper, and it is, but at the same time, Arsenal play a super high line, and they're obviously doing this experiment at the moment with like Partey playing an inverted right back. We seen in the Arsenal Fulham game at the weekend there that Partey inverted right away, and then it left this big gap down the left hand side, and they ended up conceding in the first minute. I'm not saying that same thing's going to happen against United, but I'm just saying that there's going to be a lot of space for Rashford to take advantage of down that left hand side, so I definitely see him being involved in the goal or an assist in that game as well. And then obviously he's got Brighton at home, and Brighton are yet to keep a clean sheet. After Brighton at home, they've then got Burnley, Palace, Brentford, Sheffield. So basically I'm not taking Marcus Rashford out of my team anytime soon. He's still 100% nailed on for me. And then the last midfielder was McAllister, and I'm not going to lie, I kind of have lost a bit of patience with McAllister. I brought him in just as an enabler, just as a budget option really, and to be honest, he has been a little bit unlucky. He obviously had 2 difficult fixtures in Chelsea away and Newcastle away, and then he was unluckily sent off against Bournemouth at home. It was never a red card, I mentioned that last week, so he has been unfortunate, and he might turn good because obviously Villa at home, Wolves away, West Ham at home, Liverpool now have Endo playing defensive midfield. They might bring another defensive midfielder in, so McAllister will have opportunity to play further forward, but it is just looking like there's better options than him. We've got Mbeumo we can upgrade to, we've got Sterling we can upgrade to, there's a few other options as well. So yeah, I don't see McAllister being in my team much longer, but that obviously might be a bad decision for me because again his fixtures are going to turn good and he could end up proving me wrong if he plays higher up the pitch. And then moving on to another player who was disappointed in was João Pedro. Now I wasn't disappointed in João Pedro's performance because he actually looked really good when he came off the bench. I was just disappointed that he was on the bench because obviously Enciso was out injured now and we all fully expected Pedro to start. Well, I did anyway. He wasn't 100% nailed on, but for me, out of all the options that Brighton have, I feel like he was the best one. They were starting the likes of Welbeck ahead of him, and obviously they have Lallana as an option as well, but he's better than both of those players. And I do think that long term, Pedro will break into the Brighton team, but again, he's another player that I'm probably not going to be hanging on to much longer. It's a similar situation to Estupiñán, which I mentioned earlier. Brighton's fixtures are about to turn really bad, so they've got Newcastle home, United away, Bournemouth at home is a good fixture, Villa away, Liverpool at home, City away, so really difficult fixtures for the next while. He could be a good option for like game week 10 and forward if he manages to break into the team and actually nail down a starting position, but for now he's not really a good option, so I might even just downgrade him to the likes of Archer and then free up a little bit more money that I can use him in midfield because that seems to be the area where the most points are right now, and then just play 2 strikers. And then the 2 strikers that are sort of nailed on for me at the moment for the next while anyway is Haaland. Obviously he's just nailed on for the whole season basically. He did miss a penalty against Sheffield, but obviously, you know, he did score anyway eventually. He had an XG of 1.93, which was actually his highest XG this season. So it was a little bit disappointing that he didn't return more than just the one goal. But, you know, these things happen sometimes. He still returned. He's still obviously the most nailed on option in the game. So there's not really much else to say about Haaland. He will obviously be keeping the armband for the foreseeable future as well. He's got good fixtures. He's got Fulham at home, who have the highest XG conceded in the league right now. And then West Ham away, Forest at home, Wolves away. So he has really good fixtures. He's going to be holding on to the armband for the next while for me. And the last player was Nicholas Jackson. I was actually really impressed with his overall performance. He's actually been really good all season and was unlucky to not score in his first two games, but I brought him in for Ollie Watkins and he delivered for me. He did get his goal finally. His XG stats have been really good in every game, to be honest. He had 0.53 against Liverpool, 0.79 against West Ham, 0.71 against Luton. Now, albeit it is Luton, so there is a chance that he might fall off again, but I do think that goals is going to give him confidence and he'll kick on. And obviously we've spoke about Chelsea's fixtures already. They're really good for the next while. Forest at home, Bournemouth away. Villa at home's a tricky one, but then it goes to Fulham away and Burnley away. So again, really, really good fixtures. He's not going anywhere anytime soon. So yeah, I'm overall really, really pleased with my team this week. It's been a solid start to the season. The final point tally was 68. So yeah, I'm well pleased, but there is still some tweaks that I need to make. And that brings me to my transfer plans for game week 4. So just before I go into detail about sort of my transfer plans and ideas I have, I just want to remind you that we do have Carabao Cup fixtures midweek this week. And then we also have an international break coming up after game week 4 as well. So just make sure you're keeping that in mind for any upcoming transfers that you're planning. Now, I'm not 100% certain of what I'm going to do yet. So I'm just going to talk about some of the options that I have right now. So basically there's 3 players that I 100% know that I want to move out. So McAllister is one of them, Garnacho was one of them, and João Pedro was one of them. I'm not going to do any sort of double transfers this week because I've only got the one free transfer and I'm not going to take a points hit. So it's going to be sort of gradual changes towards what I want. So basically the main decision I have to make is who to take out first of all. So if I take out Garnacho, who would be probably the ideal one to take out, it only leaves me with like 6.3 million in the bank. And I've been looking through players in that sort of price range that I could bring in for the foreseeable future. And one of those options was Ward-Prowse. I did look at him because he has Luton away next. And obviously everybody seems to be targeting the Luton fixtures right now because they look really poor. But the problem with bringing in Ward-Prowse, and the same applies to Bowen for anyone thinking of bringing him in as well, is even though he has a really good fixture against Luton, he then has City and Liverpool back to back. And then he does have Sheffield after, which is a good fixture, but then he has Newcastle. So unless you have a really strong bench, it's not worth bringing a West Ham player in right now because you're sort of bringing him in for one game, taking him out for 2, bringing him in for 1, taking him out again, bringing him in, you know what I mean? So it's just not worth it for me at this moment in time. But I do think that West Ham are really, really strong this season. I think they've done brilliant replacing Rice. Obviously, they got like 110 million it was for Rice. And they've replaced him with Alvarez, Kudus, and Ward-Prowse for like 120 million combined. So I think West Ham have done really good business and they're going to be a really good team this season. The thing about West Ham as well, though, is obviously people are going to use their players to target Luton anyway. Now, this might be a bit of a weird take, but their last 2 game weeks were Chelsea and then Brighton, so it's 2 difficult fixtures, right? And obviously they've won both and performed really well in them. But I don't know what it is with West Ham, but they always seem to perform really well in those bigger fixtures because the onus isn't on them to like take possession and dominate the game. Like against Brighton, I think they had like 20 or 30% possession or something ridiculous it was and still won the game just on the transition. But against the likes of Luton, against the likes of Sheffield, they're not really going to get the opportunity to transition that quickly. They're going to be the ones holding the ball, and I'm not convinced that they're that type of team yet. I'm not convinced they're going to be good at that yet. So it wouldn't surprise me if West Ham didn't blow Luton out of the water, because a lot of people look at it on paper and think, oh, West Ham will batter these. And I do think West Ham will win, but I just don't think it's going to be like a 3-4-0 game like the way Chelsea versus Luton was, you know. But yeah, basically, long story short, West Ham players not really a good option at the moment. Another player that I looked at potentially moving in to take Garnacho out was Andres Pereira, but the problem with him is he's picked up a bit of a knock, so I'm not 100% sure if he's even going to start the next game. He did assist in game week 1, but he only got 32 minutes off the bench, and then he did start against Arsenal, but only played 62 minutes. So he obviously scored in that game, so he's got Man City next, so I'm not going to bring him in this game week. He does have Luton at home, then Palace away after, so he could be a good budget option for only 5.5 million, but I'm not in a rush to bring him in anytime soon because he was injured at the start of the season, and it looks like he's kind of just being eased back into the team right now. He's not getting like 70, 80, 90 minutes a game. games, so not really a strong option at the moment. So that brings me back to the point I was making about moving out Garnacho. Obviously, he only leaves me with 6.3 million in the bank, and there isn't really great options for me in that market at the moment. So I'm probably not going to be able to move Garnacho out right at this moment in time. So then I could look at potentially moving João Pedro out, because again, he's not guaranteed minutes and his fixtures are turning bad. So if I take him out, it leaves me 6.9 million in the bank, and then that does leave me with some good options actually. So the obvious option would be Wissa from Brentford. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right, by the way, so apologies if I'm not. But yeah, the obvious option is Wissa. He's obviously got good fixtures. He's got Bournemouth at home. He does have Newcastle away, which is tricky, but then he has Everton at home and Forest away. So he's a really, really strong option, and I could just take João Pedro out for him, but I don't think I'm going to do that. And the reason being is because that leaves my midfield really, really weak in terms of McAllister. Garnacho would obviously be on the bench, but then I'm just not convinced of McAllister at the moment. I'm really not. And if I take McAllister out, that leaves me with 7.4 million in the bank. So obviously I'm going to be short of the likes of Maddison, who has really good fixtures coming up. He's got Burnley and Sheffield. He then does have Arsenal and Liverpool back to back, so I wouldn't bring in Maddison if you're thinking about it, unless you've got a strong bench and you can maybe rotate him out for those two games and then rotate him back in for Luton, Fulham, Palace, because he has really, really good games either side of game week 6 and 7. So he's a good option for everybody else, but for me, he's 0.2 million away from what I can afford. So my main options right now are going to be Raheem Sterling for 7.1 million. We've obviously spoke about how good Chelsea's fixtures are. The thing is though, Sterling, it was against Luton. Like, obviously it's a 19-point haul and it's really, really good. Top class if you brought Sterling in, by the way. Even with his really good fixtures, like, none of those teams are as bad as Luton. So will he be able to kick on and get points against the likes of Forest, Bournemouth, Villa, Fulham, Burnley? I think they're really good fixtures, and I am strongly tempted. He's probably my number one contender right now to come into the team. But it is something worth thinking about, because another player that would rival him coming in would be Mbeumo. Obviously, he has pretty good fixtures as well. A little bit trickier than Sterling's because he has Newcastle away and United away and that mix. But overall, he has Bournemouth at home, Everton at home, Forest away, Burnley at home. So he does have good fixtures basically right up to like game week 9. So pretty much if I do go for the midfield change this week, I'm in a toss up between Sterling and Mbeumo. And if I do go for that strategy of taking McAllister out, that could obviously backfire because McAllister's fixtures are about to turn good and he could play further forward. So that could come back to bite me. And I would also have to play Kabore for next game week. Now he's got West Ham at home, so it's not the worst fixture in the world. And I do think Luton are eventually going to get a win somewhere. And what better place to do it than their first home game in the Premier League? But obviously he's not someone I want to have in my starting 11 long term. But for next game week, if I do take McAllister out, he's going to have to play, because I'm not going to play Garnacho and I'm not going to play João Pedro because they're both going to be on the bench. And João Pedro is also going to be playing against Newcastle, which is a really difficult fixture. So yeah, just to summarize, I'm not 100% nailed on what my game week 4 transfers are going to be, but my options are pretty much just take McAllister out and upgrade to either Sterling or Mbeumo, or alternatively I can take João Pedro out and bring Wissa in and then just upgrade the midfield next week. One thing I could have done if I acted quicker on the price changes, because obviously Garnacho went down from 5 million to 4.9. If I had have acted quicker, I could have brought in Eze for 6.4 million. Obviously taking Garnacho out of the team because he's down to 4.9 million now. That only leaves me 6.3 million in the bank. So if I had have taken him out earlier, I would have had 6.4 million for Eze, and I probably would have made that swap just to have a stronger bench and stuff. And I actually think Eze has been super unlucky this season. He's got an overall XG of 1.9, and he literally hasn't delivered a goal or an assist this season yet. If you are an Eze owner, I wouldn't be too put off with him yet, because he does have Wolves at home next, and then obviously he does have Villa away, which is a tricky fixture, but then he has Fulham at home, so you could maybe get away with hanging on to him until game week 6, because I do think he's overdue returns. As I say, obviously the 1.9 XG shows you that he's central to everything Palace is doing, and he's getting involved in attacking scenarios. He's just been unfortunate not to have a return yet, and he is most likely on penalties for Palace as well, so if Palace do get a penalty, he probably will take that. So if you're an Eze owner, I wouldn't rush to get him out yet. I probably would have brought him in myself if I had have acted quicker on the Garnacho price change, but to be honest, I'm not really bothered about acting on price changes quickly, because as we seen last game week, there was a lot of injuries and people had already made their transfers early in the game week and then left themselves having to play injured players. So I'm not a fan of early transfers anyway, unless I'm like 100% nailed on that player is going to play. So I'll most likely make another video later this week just confirming what decisions I've made with my transfers. But for now, I'm just sort of weighing up McAllister for Sterling or Mbeumo or João Pedro for Wissa. Let me know in the comments what you think I should do, and then let me know as well what you're planning on doing with your team. But that's going going to do it for the game week 3 review. I hope you all had a good game week. Thank you for watching the video, and make sure to subscribe if you are new here, and also join the Discord in the link in the description as well. Like I've said, we'll have a really super active football community. We're all in the FPL as well, so if you're looking at any advice from anyone else, you can get it in there too. But thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Peace.